warm welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute privilege to be joined by the fabulous Professor Adam Bodison, OBE. Adam, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm so looking forward to this. Project management is such a key part. I remember doing my Prince 2 many years ago and learning all about it. But before we get stuck in, let me share a little bit more with the people listening and watching about yourself, Adam. So Professor Adam Bodison, OBE, is the Chief Executive of the Association for Project Management, APM, the chartered body setting the global standard for project profession. With a passion for innovation and impact, Adam highlights the vital role of project management in tackling today's complexities and driving future success. Under his leadership, APM collaborates with top organisations like PwC to demonstrate the economic and societal value of project management. A seasoned leader and author with experience spanning education, leadership and organisational growth, Adam brings compelling insights on how project management transforms industries and equips professionals to thrive in an ever-evolving world. I mean, wow, Adam, where to start? I mean, there's such a wealth of questions I've got getting into that, but could you bring it to life a bit more for us? Like, tell us a bit more about your journey so far.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot when you say it all together like that, doesn't it? Yeah. So, believe it or not, although I'm running a chartered professional body now, I actually started life out as a secondary school maths teacher. So did a maths degree mostly because that was what I was okay at school, and I didn't really know what I was. In fact, if anything, I was going to be an accountant. No offense to the accountants, but I decided I wanted to do something which was really, really exciting and would help society and improve society, make the world a better place. So I ended up going into teaching, taught in secondary schools, primary schools, and so on. Worked at the University of Warwick for quite a few years, partly on teacher training, doing education research, some international consultancy work. And after a while of working kind of in the universities, in schools, kind of in education and so on, I decided I wanted to move into the charity sector. And the main reason I wanted to make that move was because whilst I enjoyed the other work, I didn't feel it had the right level of risk and reward. And what I mean by that is if I really messed it up, right? These were huge organizations that essentially would say, look, you messed that up, don't do it again next year. And I'd have another go, right? Or if I did really, really well, they'd say, well done, do it again next year. And I thought, does that get you excited when you wake up in the morning? The charity world, though, now that's where you've got to get it right first time. You mess it up, the charity closes, and people don't get the help they need. You get it right, there's huge benefit to many, many people. So I ended up in my first chief exec role as chief exec of the National Association for Special Educational Needs. I was there for 6 years. And then I wanted to kind of do something broad, which is why I applied for the APM role, which I've been in now for about 3.5 years. It's not a planned journey by any means, but I found it very, very interesting.
Oh, I love that. I love how life sometimes throws us those plot twists, doesn't it? And you think your career is going to go in a particular direction, and then it changes. But what I got out of all of that was actually you've got a real drive for having a purpose, making sure that you're making a positive impact as widely as you possibly can. And that kind of threads through all of the roles that you've talked about. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. And even with the current role, you might think, what's project management got to do with making the world a better place and improving society? We have this great strapline at APM. I love it. It's because when projects succeed, society benefits. And for me, that just captures everything about the organization, because on the one hand, it's a membership association, it's a professional body, it does all of the things that you would expect that type of organization to do. But on the other hand, it's a registered charity, exists for the public benefit. And in my view, a successful project is one which, if you like, at the end of it, delivers those benefits for society. Lots of projects out there, of course, that are focused on, environmental issues, improving things. There's projects out there around lots of what are the UN Sustainable Development Goals and so on. So it gets a bit of a bad rep as project management, doesn't it? Maybe I sometimes talk to people who don't know about it, and they go, "Oh, is that just all those Gantt charts and things? What's that about?" And I'm like, it's so much more than that. Seriously, these people are just making our world better every single day, one project at a time. And I feel like part of the reason I like doing these podcasts and discussions is because it gives me a chance to just tell people about the brilliant work that people are out there doing.
I love that, because it's true. I mean, the project management does get a bad rep, and I'll own up and be honest. The reason I did my Prince 2 many years ago was because I had a really dreadful project manager leading a project for me, and I was like, there can't be a system that is this disjointed. So I went to study it, so I understood it, and then just realised he wasn't following it very well, because it was. Yeah. And I think that's some of the reason why it does get a bad name, but actually done well. Project management really is about making sure that all of the activities that need to happen for the change to be not only implemented, but embedded actually happen. And if you don't get all of those steps right, then the change doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, that's true. I'm not sure Prince 2 really did us any favors actually when it comes to image, because it was quite methodical and assumed that every project kind of happened in the same way. I mean, we don't offer the Prince 2 qualifications. We offer the Chartered Standard and a set of qualifications which is really based on what I would say real world projects. Yeah. So if the Prince acronym, so I don't know if your listeners will know this, but it stands for Projects in Controlled Environments. And I don't know of any project anywhere that's ever been delivered in a controlled environment. If anything, they should change it to projects in chaotic environments, right? Everywhere's just like changing so fast. There's just so much going on. And for me, I did Prince as well years ago, and I found it was great if I was talking to somebody else that had done it. It was like a language, like talk the same language. What I find about the Chartered Standard is it's all about competence. Have you got the skills to be able to not just tell other people about the project that you're doing, but to deliver benefits for society day in, day out? And that for me is the step change that the profession has made over the past, 10, 20 years.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think it gives a common language, but not particularly interesting one. But I think, when I look at the projects that I've delivered over the years, it's been much more about the competency and that ability to your point, not just tell people about the project, but take them on the journey, make them part of it, but make them really invested in the successful outcome, because they understand why we're doing it and what the benefit's going to be, not just for them, but for the wider society, has been the ones that have really flown, that have really taken off. So what do you think is that? I mean, we've talked about the fact, obviously, it's an ever-evolving world. And you're right, nothing should stay in a controlled environment, because what's controlled about life? I mean, life is an ever-changing, ever-evolving space. But we know that there's lots of changes, particularly in the business world, whether that is in private sector, public sector, charity sector. What do you think are going to be the changes that are needed in that C-suite moving forward to be able to really respond to what the evolving world needs?
Yeah, really great question. I think we're seeing a change in the whole workforce, really. I mean, before I'll come on to the C-suite, but just before that, I mean, if you think about even when people apply for a job, I remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, I'd apply for a job and someone would say, how long do you expect to be with the organisation? There's no way in a million years I would say, look, I'm going to be here 2 years and then I'm going to go off and do something else. But they'll say that now. They'll say, look, I'll come and work for you for 2 years, for 3 years. I'm going to do a particular piece of work and then I'm doing something else. And they're very upfront about that, at the interview stage. So there's this kind of projectification of the workforce, because it sounds a lot like a project. It's got a beginning and an end and a particular piece of work to be delivered. And that extends into the C-suite, right? Because, let's again just take a look back in time and look forward in time. If we think about, again, 20, 30, 40 years ago, if you were to ask most leaders of organizations, so chief execs and so on, how much of your time is spent delivering business as usual versus delivering kind of major change in your organization? I would say most people would say 90% plus is BAU, business as usual, and a small amount is probably delivering some kind of, organizational change, a kind of the next phase of the business. I think if you were to ask people today, it's like the other way around, right? I think every leader I know is just delivering major change all the time. Some of that's about tech, some of it's just about society changing, some of it is just because certain businesses just don't exist anymore because there's new things come in. And if we're serious about the fact that businesses are delivering change, then this is where the roles on the C-suite, I think, come into question. So let's take something like the COO role, Chief Operations Officer. That really is the leader of day-to-day business as usual, the leader of operations, making sure things are efficient. If we're saying it's only 5% now of what businesses are doing, is that the right role? Do we need something like a chief projects officer or a chief transformation officer whose job it is to drive change and transformation in a business, whether that's digital transformation or corporate commercial transformation or something else? So I think we're seeing all of those types of change. You see it in the HR space. You don't have HR directors now. We have another CPO, not chief projects officer, chief people officer. So you have them. But it's much, much broader than it was now. They're not just recruiting staff. It's all about culture and ethos and benefits and all kinds of different things, welfare, for people. So that shift from IQ to EQ is the kind of wider change as well, that emotional intelligence piece that we see in the boardroom. So I think, the C-suite is changing. And I think in the next 5 years, it'll be unrecognizable to what it was 10 years ago.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, when you think about the fact, I think almost transformational change has become BAU. That is almost your only constant is going to be that you're going to be running some form of transformation, and that's where but you've got to be so future focused as well as present in the moment, haven't you, to have on the horizon of what's coming next. So, and I think that, as you so eloquently put, that balance of really turning up the volume of the EQ to be able to affect that change and kind of help people in this new world with all the advances in technology and the fears that brings for people about what that means for the future. There is such a big requirement, isn't there, on that ability for us to dial into our emotional intelligence to be able to lead effectively in the future.
Definitely the emotional intelligence piece is going to be important. And actually, if you think about, AI really coming into businesses in a meaningful way, the first thing that AI is going to do is deal with all of the process-driven stuff, right? Because that's the easiest thing to do. And what does that leave? It leaves all the people stuff. And so, with your leaders, if the AI is doing everything else, you need that emotional intelligence piece more than ever before. So I think it's important already, but I think it's going to get even more important. And AI is just accelerating and amplifying probably what's already there.
I completely agree. I mean, for me, I often find when I go in and help businesses that the problem turns up in the numbers, but it always manifests in the people. Whatever's happening is happening somewhere because something's gone wrong with the people. Either they didn't have clarity, or they didn't have the right skills, or they didn't have the right leadership or support. So it's kind of, they're usually the bits that end up being the parts that need fixing, don't they?
Yeah, and I think it's not just when things go wrong, it's about the people. It's always also when things go really well, it's about the people. I always say to people, think of whether it be a project or something that you've worked on in life, where it's either been a huge success or complete disaster, and then ask yourself, was the reason that it was so successful or a complete disaster, was that because of processes or people? And 99 times out of 100 people say, oh yeah, it was an individual or a group of people that really made the difference there. And as I say, I think that's the bit that's just going to get dialed right up in the next few years.
That really makes me smile. I was talking to a client the other day who was like, oh yeah, Kim, business is hard. And I was like, okay, so tell me a bit more about that. And he was like, oh, I've got customers. I was like, they're people. And I've got business partners, they're people. I've got suppliers, so they're people. I said, even regulators are people. I said, like, what you've got is a people issue. It's like, it's not the thing that you've been used to. You've got this far because your IQ was brilliant. and you already knew how to solve the problem. But when the problem can be solved by AI, the problem you've now got to solve is, how do you take the people on the journey? And how do you make sure that they understand the part they've got to play, and that they have everything available to them to be able to play that part?
You are so right. And this is why, I talked about the chartered project professional standard before, and the competencies that sit behind it. If you look at those, they're kind of split into multiple parts, but one of the most important parts is around people. So, we've been talking a lot, even in this conversation, about stakeholder engagement, how you bring people with you and so on. And this is my thing, right? So I just think if you're going to be a leader, if you're going to be in the C-suite, there are different routes you can take to get there, right? So you could have come through a kind of HR type route, could have been a chief marketing officer or something like that, marketing route. You could have come through a finance route. But whichever route you come through, the bit that's often missing is, how do you deliver change effectively and bring the people with you? And that's the bit that projects can bring. It's one of the reasons I get so frustrated, by the way, with MBA programs, because MBA programs are always focused on HR, marketing, finance, and that's great. But it seems to be they miss a trick with not having project management in there, because it brings all of that together and helps leaders to deliver the check. I've started, when I talk to people, if leaders, if I really want them to get on board with what I'm talking about here, I don't use the phrase project management to start off with, because they have a view already of what that is. I talk about strategy execution. When I talk about strategy execution, leaders go, oh, yes, I'm really interested now. Of course, I want to deliver my strategy successfully. And just by changing that word, they take on board everything I say, and they go, yeah, I need that in my business. If I have the same conversation, I talk about project management, they go, oh, yeah, we've got people that do that. So I find that really, really interesting. So I think there is something there, but there is this image problem that we have to tackle.
I think, unfortunately, often we get a label, and we've got a pre-reading of that label, haven't we? And I think because we have projects at so many different levels in an organisation, that actually it's perhaps incorrectly lost its impact, in the fact that actually they are about strategic execution. They are about, how do we actually deliver the strategy? Because if not, the strategy is great, looks lovely, sounds amazing, but it won't get done. It won't happen. We won't evolve. We'll just kick the can a little bit further down the road, unless you've got an infrastructure of the right competencies and the right focus, I think. Because for me, one of the things that that I think is great about projects done well is they really are focusing on all lenses. So how is this going to impact the people? How's this going to impact the end user? How's this going to impact the existing business? You've got to literally put every hat on, haven't you, and look at it through that lens, which is why they done well enable that strategy to be executed positively. But as you say, it probably does need a little bit of a rebranding in it. So what are they, and what are they used for? Because it's been a term that's probably not been always used in the right way, and not necessarily got the best image out there.
Yeah, and in fact, we actually tend to use the term project professionals now, partly because of this image thing I've talked about, but also there's actually a whole range of other roles, planners and project controls folk and schedulers and risk analysts and all of these other people, which are project professionals, but they're not necessarily project managers. So it's quite a broad church of people, really.
Yeah. Well, isn't it? There's so many elements that are involved in that, and actually, what I've seen, and hopefully this resonates, is when you've got those project professionals, they're each experts in their area, and actually, it's that engaging of the experts that actually allows the overall project to be ultimately successful, because you've not got one person trying to be all things to all people. They're actually going, well, hold on, I need an analyst here, and I need this part here, and actually what I'm going to do is kind of almost coordinate all of that to a bit like a film director. I'm going to direct all of the parts and make sure that we stay on script, but allow people to actually bring those parts to life in the way that they are best to do so.
I think that's a really good analogy, and of course, to do that well, you need to have some level of understanding of what all of those parts are, and you might yourself be experts in some of those, but nobody can be an expert in everything. And what we always describe is there's kind of 4 broad areas. So there's kind of setting up for success, preparing for change, the people and behaviors, which is what we've been talking about, and then planning and managing deployment. And within that, there's kind of obviously different competencies. And we say that, anybody who's kind of a chartered standard of project professional, they need to have a good grounding across those 4 areas so they can do that coordination role that you've just described really effectively.
And that's so key, isn't it? And actually, it is a big C-suite impacted role. These programs of work that we're looking to do, particularly when we're driving transformational change, whether that's in whatever sector that we're in, are things that are the parts that keep the board awake at night, aren't they? The parts where they have invested a lot of time, money, resource, reputation in the delivery of some of these. So actually, it is a key part and should really have probably a broader voice at the table.
Yeah, and I think particularly in the early stages of a project, one of the things that I sometimes get frustrated about is when I hear, a politician or a minister talk about how quickly they're going to get spades in the ground, because they want to see kind of progress being made on an infrastructure project, for example. And I think, but for a little bit more time spent getting the planning bit really, really done well and really thinking about the risks and so on, that will save you so much time and money later on. And by the way, this is public money. We want it to be spent well. We only have to pick up a newspaper probably any day of the week and we'll find examples of projects where public money has not been spent well, or it's not in the intended way. Why are ministers saying that? Why are politicians saying that? Because of course they're not qualified project professionals, so that they don't know. But what they are is project sponsors, and we see this in the boardroom as well. People will be given a project that they're going to be kind of accountable for. They need to kind of sponsor that and work with the people delivering it to get it over the line. They're kind of the senior leadership kind of advocate, if you like. But who's had training in how to be an effective project sponsor? Very few people. Very few people. So that's an area where we need to kind of upskill people, and that will help to change the profile of the profession as well.
Oh, that is so true. In fact, I was working with a client just last week on that move from project owner to project sponsor, because they've actually, they're now in the C-suite, but they were trying to still own project and coming up, against some rubbing up incorrectly with the new project owner. So helping them understand actually, what is your role as a sponsor? How do you move to that? Or how do you make sure that you're sponsoring it, but actually you're not getting in there and taking over and trying to derail it? Because actually that's why you've got your project professional that is owning it and delivering it for you. But a bit like that move from exec to non-exec. It's like you're no longer here to do, you're here to guide, you're here to advise, you're here to challenge, but you're not here to do the doing anymore. And that can be a hard transition for people, can't it?
Yeah, I think it's harder if you've done one and then you try and do the other. It's easy if you just come in and do one or the other. When you've got to, think about my own role. So I'm in an executive role by day, but then I have a number of kind of non-exec roles that I do, and kind of voluntary advisory roles. And it's very easy to slip into, let me help you with this. And I think that the secret is, one, to just constantly check yourself to make sure you're not doing that, but also make sure you have a culture in the boardroom where other people can challenge you on that as well and say, Adam, actually, that's not what we're here for. And that's not met with defensiveness. That's met with, good point. Let me think again about that. And you need to have that kind of peer reflection, peer review in boardrooms. I think it's really important.
It's so important, because we can't see our own blind spots, can we? Because we're blind to them. So unless we've opened that culture to say, I know my role here is to advise. If I cross the line, please let me know, because it won't be my intention, but it might be my impact. To just allow you to have that additional insight into your self-reflective moments, isn't it? So you can go, I'm constantly checking myself, but I'm opening it out and saying, please check with me. If I do cross that line, if I do overstep, then actually I want you to let me know, because we've all seen those examples, haven't we, where it hasn't quite gone as well as we would like it to. And the person I worked in one once, where the non-exec chair used to fly in almost like CEO for the day, manage everything, and then fly out again. And I had to take him to one side and say, look, I'm really sorry, but that's not helping.
It's very disruptive, isn't it?
Yeah, because they don't know how to deliver against that. And I was a consultant at the time, and actually went on to coach them. And they're actually, how can you make sure that your great experience and your knowledge and expertise is optimized without actually disrupting everything? Because you're not then around to help them implement it the way you would like it to be implemented. So you've kind of just dropped a bomb and gone away again. So Adam, I could chat to you all day, because I think it's so insightful. Looking at those parts around saying, actually, it's about being intentional, isn't it, in the things that we're doing. So project professionals are looking at everything that is needed to be required for that project to be implemented successfully, and ensuring it is undertaken intentionally across all of those elements. And I think that's such a key part of what we need as we move forward, is to be more intentional in the steps that we take. So what's next for you and for APM? I mean, you strike me as you're a person that's driven by mission and purpose. So I'd love to know what can we expect next?
Well, I'm certainly not looking for my next challenge from APM yet. I mean, on a personal level, I'm looking to expand my kind of non-exec director portfolio. So I talked about doing some NED roles already, and one of the things I suppose my previous NED roles have focused on, because of my background, it is schools and education type organizations. And I suppose as part of my work with APM and working with much more corporate organizations, I'm looking to do board roles which are kind of maybe more commercial and more at a national level. So that's kind of, for me, the next thing. Planning to be at APM for a while longer, because we're still in the middle of doing some really good stuff which I want to see through. But I've been here for about 3.5 years now, and in that time, our organization has almost doubled in size.
Wow.
In terms of revenue, membership is growing, chartership is growing, our qualifications, we've now sold more than 250,000 qualifications. We've got about 25,000 a year of people doing our qualifications. So we're in a really good space, and we've just got a lot of our technical debt sorted, dealing with things like getting a new CRM in, and, all of those decisions that you make thinking, oh, this will be a bit of a sticking plaster for the moment, and then you have to unpick all of those things at some point later on and fix them. So we've done all of that now, and so we're just at this point where we're ready to scale. So this is a really exciting time. So for APM over the next few years, it's really all about growth, both in the UK, which is where our kind of core market is, but we've also started to expand internationally as well, into the Middle East, places like Australia, Hong Kong, some parts of Europe as well. So this is a really exciting time for APM, but also for the profession more broadly.
Yeah, I love that, and it sounds like you're the right leader to be at the helm to take them through that exciting time. That global transformation, whilst getting deeper into the kind of the professional upskilling of how we implement these. I'm really looking forward to seeing the ongoing success of yourself personally and of APM, and the impact that they are going to have globally in helping us build that more sustainable future, and ensure that we are delivering things the way that we want to. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
And for everybody listening and watching, I hope you found today's show as insightful and thought-provoking as I did. And until next time, take care.